So you just mentioned, or you repeated the sentence, hurt people, hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. I actually picked that up from my cousin who was in AA, and he said that one day. I thought, oh my God, there's so much truth and wisdom in that. Because when somebody's behaving in a way that's causing us pain or causing other people pain, they're just doing and saying hurtful things. The tendency, and sometimes a tragic human tendency, is to make that person wrong, or to attack them, or to shut them down in some less than ideal way. And but if we can remember, I mean, think about a time when somebody hurt our feelings, and maybe we expressed ourselves to them out of that pain. A lot of times it can be quite harsh and angry, and it can be an attack and accusations and things like that. And so it's when we're in pain, when we're being difficult or harsh or uncooperative, it's often out of a feeling of pain that we're having. And it's a thing I believe to be the case, is that if we feel that the pain we're experiencing has been caused by another person, like something they did or said is causing me pain, then maybe unconsciously, sometimes consciously, but a lot of times unconsciously, we want to cause them pain. We want them to feel the kind of pain that we feel they caused us.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that I call it a tragic human tendency, because it doesn't work, right? I mean, let's think of an example, say a relationship example, where somebody has been, somebody hasn't been there for us in a way. They've been hanging out with their friends, or they've been traveling a lot, and I'm not getting my needs for closeness and intimacy met. And then maybe when they come home, it's like, well, you're never here, and the dishes, I'll do all the cooking, and you don't do your part, and it's interesting, because what's beneath that is the pain of not feeling our needs met, a need for closeness, intimacy, time with that person, and yet out of that pain we act in a way that actually drives them away. Right? Mm-hmm. If we start complaining and criticizing that person, the last thing they want to do is spend more time with us. So it's understandable, but it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so what practical wisdom would say is to calm down, take some deep breaths, try to understand, what can I say or do that's actually going to get the result I'm looking for. And a lot of times we don't even take the time to look beneath the surface to see what's driving our behavior. And if it is something like the example I use, where I just want to spend more time with you, well, wouldn't that be a better approach? Mm-hmm. Say, look, I love you, I miss you, I enjoy our time together. Is there any way you can arrange your schedule so we can spend more time together? Because, I love you, which is completely different from, you're an asshole, and you're never here, and you don't do anything when you're here, and you just blah, blah, blah. Nobody likes complaining. Even if it's based on truth. Nobody likes complaining. Complaining is something that I call below the line. And that's a whole other conversation that I can share. But because there's every single thing we do is either above or below the line. And I can explain that if you like.
Yes, please.
So when I've done my corporate leadership training and communication, conflict management, all this stuff, I always teach this principle of above and below the line, because, and the way I present it is I usually ask people, like, imagine that you're relaxing in the evening, you've got a couple of kids that are playing in the next room, and you hear a loud crash, and you say, what happened? And without any variance, the group responds, nothing. The kids say nothing, and yet you just heard a loud crash. Obviously something just happened. So on the board I'll write the word denial.
Yeah.
And then you go into the room and you see the broken lamp. And what do the two kids do now? It's their fault. No, it's his fault. No, it's her fault. They blame each other. So and I write the lay blame. And then once you talk to them a little while, you realize one of them actually tripped over the cord and knocked the lamp down to the floor and broke it. And then what does that kid like? What is that child likely to say? And most likely they're going to say something like, well, she was chasing me. Or, that was a stupid place for that cord. It was just an accident waiting to happen. Or they'll make excuses, or they'll justify it in some way. So I'll write justify, make excuses on the board. And I'll often make the kind of corny joke that it's a good thing only children behave this way when something goes wrong. And usually it gets a laugh. But this is one of those tragic human tendencies. Something goes wrong, people run for cover, they try to avoid taking responsibility for it. And they hope people don't notice, or they lie about it, or they lay blame and all of that. And there's a whole array of things that happen that I call below the line. And complaining is certainly one of them. Feeling like a victim, like it's woe is me, there's all this stuff bad happening, and making excuses. One of the things I've been writing about recently is this idea that apologies are much more effective than excuses.
Oh.
Right?
Tell me more.
Well, because the tendency is like, for instance, if I show up late somewhere and I've caused somebody to wait for me, the tendency is to say, oh, well, I got stuck in traffic, or some excuse about why I'm late. And that particular one people use a lot, but let's face it, it's kind of a lame excuse, because it's not like that's the first time in human history where there's been traffic. So you could have planned for that. These days you can check it with Google Maps and find out how long it's going to take you within a few minutes often. So the truth of the matter is this person has been waiting. Now, depending on that person and their state of mind and their kind of temperament, they might be irritated.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sitting here waiting. Some people feel like that it's a disrespectful thing to cause somebody to wait, to cause them to wait. So that's what you want to address. You want to say, listen, I'm really sorry that I kept you waiting. I know how, I know you're a busy person, and and I know that that can be irritating, and so I hope you'll accept my apology. And usually, in my experience, that's a lot more effective than excuses, because we get tired of hearing excuses, and it doesn't really satisfy deeply usually. Sometimes it does. Oftentimes I'll say something like, listen, I apologize for being late. This isn't really an excuse, but it does explain what happened. And again, I'm not offering it as an excuse. I should have anticipated, and I regret being late, but there was this kind of phone call that I got right before I had to leave that was something I really had to deal with right then and there, and I hope you can understand. So, but anyway, to get back to the whole idea of above and below the line, is that there's a whole long list of behaviors and thoughts that are below the line. Anything from judgments, like harsh judgments, like thinking somebody, name calling, thinking somebody's a jerk, and criticizing people without really doing it in a way that they could potentially improve based on it. I mean, we all know there's something we call feedback. Now, feedback can be, supportive, caring feedback, and it can be riddled with judgments. And one thing I know about being a human being is we all have blind spots. There are things we don't know about ourselves, about our behaviors, things that impact other people that we're just clueless about. We've all got them. They say you can't read the label from inside the jar. So the only way we find out how our behaviors and things we do and say affect others is if somebody offers us feedback. It's hard to hear feedback gracefully because a lot of times we feel like we're being judged and attacked. So that's a skill worth developing. It's like accepting with gratitude when somebody's offering us some feedback. Realizing it may not even be true. It may be their stuff. It may be their projection, whatever. But it's always good to listen with an open mind and hear it. So giving somebody feedback with the intention to serve is very different from giving somebody feedback just to criticize them, to make us feel some sort of, odd little immature, egotistic pleasure of like, I'm better than you kind of thing. That's a gross generalization there. But yeah, so anything that we do that's either self-centered or trying to cover our tracks or make ourselves look good at somebody else's expense, or to not treat somebody with dignity and respect, these are all below the line.
Yeah.
And above the line is taking responsibility, making that apology, offering a person feedback as opposed to talking about them and gossiping behind their back and things like that. Because what I've found is that nothing below the line, literally nothing below the line actually works or really serves any kind of higher purpose. Now you could look, people are going to say, well, sometimes, coming up with an excuse or blaming somebody else does keep us from getting in trouble. But is it really serving the whole? Is that where you want to live? In Eastern philosophy, there's something called dharma and dharmic behavior, which is appropriate and timely action, and taking the high road is another way of saying it versus taking the low road. Well, clearly below the line behaviors are taking the low road. Taking the high road is taking action to solve the problem. An example, I recently moved into this place here, and I kind of rushed into it, and I didn't check everything out, and I used to be a carpenter, so I noticed little things, and there are a lot of little things that aren't done right and done well, and the towel bars aren't level and they're loose and things like that, and I found myself complaining a lot about all these little things that are a little bit funky around here. And and then I gave a little presentation where I was talking about this above and below the line thing, and I realized, oh my God, I've been totally below the line. I've been complaining about all this stuff. And when I realized that, I went out, got my toolbox, and just started fixing stuff. It's like I could complain to the landlord, why should I fix it? I don't own this place, I'm renting, and the landlord should fix it, blah, blah, blah. Truth of the matter is, I can fix it, and to be honest, I actually kind of enjoy fixing things. So I just fixed it, and it was like, okay, now I'm back above the line, and it felt a lot better. I mean, think about how you feel when you're complaining. Does it feel good? No. So yeah, taking action to fix things, having that difficult but important conversation done with the use of those 4 gates of speech. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? Basically, it's taking the high road, and it's not always super clear, but most of the time it is. And I'll give an example. This may seem like a dumb little example, but sometimes I go to the bulk session in the natural food store, and I'll get this organic product, and there's the conventional right next to it. And years ago, I'd write down the number for the conventional because it was a little bit cheaper than the organic product, and who's going to ever know? What are the cashier's not going to check to see if it's organic rice or regular or whatever. But I just realized that's below the line, and that's not in integrity. It's not honest, and I don't feel good about myself when I do it. And I've saved a few cents, So that's a real minor example, and I have to say, I absolutely do my best to stay above the line in those things. even if it's, giving back, somebody gives me too much change, a cashier gives me too much change, I always give it back. And they usually smile and, well, thank you for being honest. And then I actually feel good, a lot better than I'd feel if, like, oh, I got away with that. So we could go on and on. I could spend days talking about above and below the line and dharmic or adharmic behaviors. But the truth is that we feel much better about who we are, and we're creatures of habit. And if we get in the habit of taking little shortcuts and speaking little white lies and untruths in order to kind of grease the wheels a little bit or make things work in our favor a little bit better, we pay a price for that in terms of our own relationship with ourselves. And staying above the line and taking the high road is really where we want to live. And we generate new habits that keep us above the line. It becomes easier and easier to make apologies and to fess up to things as opposed to, being combative or making excuses and so forth.